What's up, everyone? This is me here. You're on the channel Moreawesomer Recordings. In last video, we talked a little bit about what initial gear you need to get started. We talked a little bit about the DAW. We talked a little bit about the headphones you need and maybe some studio monitors. In this video, I wanted to take a closer look at the program, the DAW specifically. And I want to give a very introductory overview into how Logic Pro works. So we're just going to get right into it.
And they all at these suits now. How back at it, couldn't get the habit, but I'm kicking ashes like a soccer captain. They tried to show me in the closer cabin, but I'm winning now when they hate it happen. I can stop with all that chittin' chatting, all these dry lies got they lips chapping. The money, the moolah is what I'm stacking. I got way too much cheddar to be out capping.
Well, what's up, everyone? So now we have Logic opened, and all I've done right now is I've created a new file from scratch. That's it. That's all that's happened right now. And as you can see, I'm greeted with this screen that tells me what type of track I want to start off with. So these are the 5 basic tracks in Logic. And, as you can see right now, I have those AKG headphones, those $10 ones from my previous video. But what I have here is the 5 basic options that you can choose from for tracks. We're really going to be focusing on 2 different options here, but I'm just going to briefly go over all 5. So we have the software instruments, which is basically like a virtual instrument that you can download from the internet, or Logic has a bunch of virtual instruments that you can use. These are your synthesizers, your virtual keyboards, all these different things that you have. Your audio is if you want to, say, plug in a mic or some sort of external device that can record sound, so basically a mic. You would click audio, and then Logic would really sync that up right to your audio recording device. And then you have drummer, not really working on drummer right now. External MIDI. So what is MIDI? You can think of MIDI as those keyboards that you see that connect right into your computer. So let's say you play the note C on a MIDI keyboard, it will register as a note C, and it will also register things like velocity, how long you're playing the note, all those sorts of things, and that's what makes a MIDI keyboard a MIDI keyboard. The cool thing about Logic, as we'll see in just a few minutes, is that it actually also has its own internal digital MIDI keyboard. But if you had an external keyboard that you just had like over here, and you wanted to play physical sounds or physically on the keyboard and touch the keys physically, Logic gives you the option. And then, of course, you have your guitar and bass options. So if you click this button, you can see some advanced details. This basically tells you the default instrument that's going to come up, and then this tells you where that's going to go to. We're not going to focus on that right now. We're just going to stick with the basics here. So we're creating a software instrument, and we're just creating one software instrument right now, and we're just going to go ahead and press create. So what does this do? Well, this creates a track for us. And the tracks show up here, right here, as you can see, track 1. But I'm not going to focus on that right now. I'm just going to basically move from the left of my screen to the right of my screen. But the first thing I really have to deal with is this pop-up, this keyboard that came up. So this is what I was talking about. This is your digital MIDI keyboard. MIDI is one of those things that you should get down as well. Just like DAW is an acronym. You don't really need to know what MIDI stands for. I don't even know what MIDI stands for, but just know that it is some sort of keyboard that you can play that connects into your computer. So in this case, it's a digital MIDI. So, and you can see right here, I'm playing the different notes. Now you can play it with your cursor, or you can play it with your keyboard. So right now I'm pressing the A button on my keyboard, S button, D, and it just corresponds with all these. And you can also do semicolon and different other symbols that may come up with the plus sign here, and just different things that come up with this. So we're going to go over things like velocity, octaves, all those kinds of things in later videos, but this is just a very basic tutorial. So what I'm going to do to get rid of this, there's 2 ways. You can press this X button over here, or, let me bring it back, you can press Command K. Now, in Logic, you're going to learn about all the different shortcuts as you move along throughout your process and your journey. And so I recommend that you really nail down these shortcuts, because they're going to save you so much time. So I'm just going to press Command K to get rid of the keyboard, and boom, now we have Logic in its purest form. What am I going to do now? Well, as you can see, we're going to work from our left to our right. So our left shows us the library of different instruments that we have to work with. So in this case, we're working with our E piano, as we see here, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But now I have different instruments that I can choose from. So let me click classic electric piano. Let's see how that sounds. So I'm going to press classic electric, and then I'm going to press Command K for my keyboard to pop up. That's what it sounds like. Now, let's say if we wanted hip roads, let's see that one. So all of a sudden it sounds a little bit different, and you basically have a bunch of different instruments here to work with. I'm going to get rid of that. So this gives you all the different sounds in that specific instrument's library. And what I mean by that is, these are all separate instruments, but the beauty of having this virtually is that one plugin, one instrument can have several different presets or several different sub-instruments that you can choose from, which is great. So the common theme here is that these are all kind of electric pianos, digital pianos, and these are all different types of digital pianos that make different kinds of sounds. So all of a sudden in one instrument, you have multiple different sounds that you can work with. So I'm going to get rid of that. That's this button right here, the library. The next button is this info button. This info button tells us a little bit more about the track and the project as a whole. So up here we have some information about the track. It's a MIDI default, right? So it's not muted, it's not looped, it's not quantized. All these things are off. We're not going to really worry about those in this video. And then so I'm going to just do that. If you want to see more information about the track specifically, you can see that you can just hover down on this button and click on all the track information that you see. So this is going to be really important. Remember this, channel inst 1. So this is going to really be the track identifier right here. And so when we're working with things like compression in the future, more advanced things, it's going to be really important to be able to identify different tracks, because you might have multiple different suitcase MK2s. And so you want to make sure that you're connecting an audio track to the right one. And so how do you know that? Well, each track would have their individual identifier, which you can only find in this drag down menu over here when you click on the track. So now that we've covered that, let's go over this. What's happening over here? It looks a little bit complicated, but it's really not that bad. We're going to ignore the setting for this case. But the first thing we see is this EQ button. So I'm going to click it. What does EQ stand for? EQ stands for Equalizer. So what's going to happen now is it's going to pop up this little Equalizer plugin. This is the channel EQ. This is Logic's default equalizer, comes standard with Logic, and it's a great tool that you can use. I use it in basically every single one of my songs. It's so good. And it really allows you to visualize what you're equalizing. So I have this equalizer up, okay, and I'm going to press Command K, and that brings up our keyboard again. So I'm going to press the A button and play a basic note by itself. And you can see all that comes up with that note being played. Now let's say, I don't like these high parts of the note, so I can click on this, and I can drag this over here, and it'll only play the low parts of the notes. We're going to go a little bit more into Equalizer in future videos and other plugins. I'm going to have a video dedicated to all the coolest plugins that Logic comes stock with. So I'm going to move on for now, but just know that the first thing is the Equalizer. And it's really cool because if you do this, and let's say you make some sort of setting adjustments, it shows up over here, so you can get like a very thumbnail overview of what's going on. But I'm just going to turn off the Equalizer for now. So the next thing is Midi Effects. Now remember what MIDI stands for. MIDI is that keyboard that came up right here. So Midi Effects is anything that will affect the notes that are actually being played and how they're being played. So if I click on Midi Effects, you can see there are different things like Arpeggiator, chord trigger, modifier, modulator. Let's just click on Arpeggiator right now. And let's open up the Arpeggiator. So what's going to happen is I'm going to have to create a set of notes or a sequence of notes on this region over here. And so we're not going to do that for now. But basically, the Arpeggiator will read those notes and go up and down on those notes as it moves on. Or that would be this setting. Or it could just go up those notes, or it could just go down those notes. So it really just depends on what you want. I'm going to turn this off. We don't really need this for now. I'm just going to click No Plugin. So after three things, we got setting, equalizer, MIDI effects. Finally, we get to our instrument, right? Because all these things theoretically come, I don't know why they put equalizer before the instrument itself. Maybe you want to set that out from the beginning. Anyways, but MIDI effects definitely has to come before the instrument. You have to kind of know what is being played before that sound can be made first. So let's open up our instrument. We can open up our instrument by clicking this little button over here in the middle. Over here, it just opens up the different instruments, and this is a lot of different instruments. We're going to talk about that again in another video. This can just turn off the instrument. So now if I play something, no sound will come out. But I'm going to turn it on. I want that on. And here, is our E piano. So there are a bunch of different things over here, and I encourage you to experiment with them, see what you like. You can bass boost it, you can increase the volume. If you're familiar at all with the violin, or you've played in an instrument in high school or something, you can figure out what some of these mean, like tremolo. And so you can change that instrument however you want. That's by clicking the effects button. Details gives you a little bit more things that you can play with. Now, we saw over here, if I click here, we saw over here all the different instruments that this has to offer. But you can also change it from here. So if I click, so right now I'm on Suitcase MK2, but if I wanted to do a classic Wurlitzer, look, it also changes over here. So this is technically, what I have open is one single instrument. This is the software for one single instrument, and all of these different sub-instruments here are what we call presets. So this is what the developers have as preset instruments that you can choose, sub-instruments that you can choose from this main instrument. So I want this elevation whirly. Okay, sounds a lot different than the other ones that we've been working with. Let's go with that sound for today. So I'm going to close out of both the instrument and that. Now, again, let's turn on our channel EQ right now. Why did we click channel EQ and why did it show up over here? Well, this over here would be your plugin rack. So this allows you to create plugin after plugin. And you can think of plugins as different effects that are in Logic Pro X. So the channel EQ is one effect that affects a specific instrument. So if I wanted to add overdrive, I could add that. If I wanted to add a different one, I could add delay, some delay designer. And so all of those go into this plugin rack over here. And what's important to know about the plugin rack, that all that I will cover about it today, I'm going to turn everything off right now, but all that I will cover about the plugin rack today is that the plugins go in order. So first this piano is played, that raw signal from the piano is played, then it will be EQ'd, then this plugin will go, then this plugin will go, then this plugin will go. It's all in order. So if you wanted to change the order of something, you can move this up and say you wanted the delay to be before the overdrive, you can drag that up. That's all I'm going to cover for that. Same with sends. I'm not going to work on sends in this video, but sends is a really great way, thing that Logic has that is honestly going to be its own little video. This is very basic introductory stuff. So I'm going to skip over stereo out, read. Now, what I'm going to go over is these last two buttons over here. This button is pretty straightforward. If you're doing your own experimentation, you've probably figured this out by now, but this is the pan. So everything to the right pans right, everything to the left pans left. I'm not sure how my audio will record, but if I press K, Command K, you can see now the audio is only coming out to the right, and you can see that here, you can see that here, you can see that here. Now it's coming out to the left. And so the way to reset it or manually change the number that you want on there is you just double click and press 0 and press enter. And now it's back to where it was before. Lastly is this. This is just a very simple volume slider. So it defaults at 0. Again, you can just double click and press 0, but you can move it up and down as you need to change the volume of different tracks. So that's this left side. But you might be asking, what is this right side doing? Well, if you look closely at the labels of each track, you can see that elevation whirly is what we're dealing with, and that's this one right here. But stereo out, this is our master track. So anything that you do over here will affect everything as a whole. All the tracks combined will be affected if you change something here. So let me create another track, and I'm just going to create another track very simply, and see, look what changes. Over here it changes, but it's the same over here. There's nothing different. Maybe these audio effects, the size is bigger just so it can parallel what's looking there, but there's no added effects or anything. But the moment I add, let's do something like a pitch correction or something, now it'll show up on both because it affects everything. It's one track that affects everything. That's all I'm going to talk about there. And again, you can control the pan or the volume for the entire track as a whole. More on that in other videos. So what are we looking at now? I'm going to just get rid of both of those and open up the Logic Playground. This is the place in Logic where the creativity really happens. In terms of what notes are being played, the arrangement of the song, and everything in that sense. So over here, you have your track list. I'm just going to create, just for simplicity, I'm going to create 6 more tracks. So in this case, now I have 8 total tracks. You can see right here the number of tracks I have. And you can label these tracks by double clicking whatever you want. Let's say sample 1, boom. And then this one's going to be sample 67, I don't know, whatever you want to make it. And now we can click on each individual track and affect that instrument specifically. So if I click that track, press Command K, now I'm playing instrument 5. But if I click, one second, and now if I click this track and press Command K, now I'm affecting that. So pretty straightforward over there. This is where your arrangement happens. So I'm just going to do a very brief example over here. I'm going to right click and press create MIDI region, and I'm going to drag that region over 2 measures, 2 bars. I'm going to double click that, and what's going to happen is my piano roll is going to pop up. Now I can, it's basically like this, but it's not controlled by the keys on your keyboard. Here, you can do what the beauty of digital audio production is, and you can actually input a note by yourself. So I'm going to hold down the command button, and I'm going to press C3. And all of a sudden, that creates a note in C3. I can do so much with this, right? I can shorten the note. I can move the note up and down. Whatever you want to do, the freedom and creativity is yours. The beauty of this also is that you can create multiple notes in one time. So I'm just going to create a simple C major chord. And I'm just going to press the space bar, and it's going to play it. Now, one way to get right back to where you were is pressing the return button. And it brings the playhead, which is this thing, where what audio will be played next, back to the start. So I can keep doing that. Keep pressing enter. But if I want to pause it, I'll just press the space bar again. Now, this would really never be done in a song because they're not in the same key, but I'm just going to add a C minor chord right next to my C major chord and see what happens next. So now we've just created a little two bar chord progression, right? Where we go from C major to C minor. So I'm going to move this down. That's all we need to really focus on there. And you can, the cool thing is that, so this is elevation whirly, and this is what I really like about Logic compared to a lot of other DAWs. Now I can just drag this literally wherever I want to drag it. So if I don't want this instrument to play it and I want, let's say, this instrument to play it, I like the sound of that, I'm going to keep it there. And I can go ahead and delete this instrument if I want to. Or if I want both of them to play it, I can press this, Command C, and then click over here, Command V, and now they'll both play it. And let's say I want one to be a higher volume than the other. I want this one to be a little bit more subtle and this one to be a little bit more louder. Boom. We can change that sound however we want to. Now, what if this is going way too slow for us? Well, we can edit our beats per minute over here. Right now we're at 120 BPM, which is the tempo of the song. So let's say I want to do 150. I want to make it a little bit faster. I can do that too now. And now it's faster. Over here, I'm going to draw your attention to the metronome. So metronome is basically this icon over here. It's like an old style metronome. And it basically helps you keep track of tempo. So watch what happens when I play this now. It automatically keeps track of where the beats are. And if you notice, the first note is played louder than the other 3 notes. So this signifies when the first note in the measure starts. So that's it for the metronome. Lastly, I want to really quickly talk about these last 2 things over here. We're not going to focus on this one or this one. We're going to focus on these 2 in the middle. This is very simple. It's just a notepad. You can, one sec. This is very simple. It's a notepad. You can take notes. And if there's something in a song that you really like, you can, make note of that. You could write lyrics here if you really wanted to. Very simple, very straightforward. And this last one that I want to draw your attention to is what we call the loop library. So if you're not seeing this, what you need to do is you need to go to Logic Pro Sound Library and then download all available sounds. And now we get a loop library. Theoretically, these are all copyright free. I don't know. I wouldn't really play with a lot of them. I use a lot of the sound effects that come in this in some of my songs, but not necessarily like any of the melodies or the drums. Okay, I like that. We're gonna drag that in here, and we're gonna just to show you how easy it is to drag that in there. Now we have that. Boom, we've just created kind of a two-part rhythm over there. Now, what happens is, if you notice, our tempo here is 107, but our tempo here is 150. So when I drag it, Logic will accurately and just automatically adjust the tempo as needed. So I only have this for 1 bar, but I want it for 2 bars. I could either Command C, Command V, or I can just drag over here where it says the loop, and I can just drag it to loop 1 more time. So the thing about tracks is that, and regions, is that if you go lower, it extends it so you can write more in it. But if you go higher, it loops it over and over again. So now I'll have it looped. Boom, done like that. And if I want this to keep repeating over and over again while I kind of create new melodies or come up with new suggestions, I can just drag over here to the 1 mark, to the 3 mark. So wow, look at this. It'll just keep replaying over again. And in my head I could hum melodies, think of what I want to do next. So that's a very brief introduction on what's going on in Logic, the very basics behind Logic. I will say that if you just got Logic, there's one more thing you need to do. You should go to Preferences, and then you should go to Advanced Tools, and make sure that all of these are checked, or press Enable All. This will allow you to really make full use of Logic and all the features that it offers. So that's it for this video. In the next video, I want to talk a little bit more about plugins, and in future videos, maybe talk a little bit more about how Logic works, and maybe even look into specific instruments. So I hope this was a great learning opportunity for you all, and I'll catch you on the next one.